Good evening and welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting, June 11th, 2018, at 7 p.m. Would everyone please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All the members of the board are in attendance, along with our Assistant Town Manager, Dee Casey. Town Manager Jeff Hull is not here today. He's taking a little vacation with his family. Transmittal of Treasury warrants 48, 48A, 49, and 49A. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous? We have minutes of the May 29th, 2018 meeting. Is there a motion to accept the approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Any errors, omissions, corrections that need to be done? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Please, oh yes, and one abstention, because Jonathan was not at that meeting. So, can we have a vote? Did I see? Okay, so 4 in favor, 1 abstain. Thank you. And first is appointments at 7 o'clock. Frank West and Mike Kelly from the Wilmington Minutemen regarding the flag retirement ceremony.
Hi, I'm Mike Kelly. I'm the captain of the Wilmington Minutemen. And we'd like to, and this is Sergeant Frank West of the Wilmington Minutemen. And we would like to bring to the attention of the town that our flag retirement day will be on Thursday, June 14th, Flag Day. And I'd like to turn it over, the program over to Sergeant West, and he can give you more information on what will be done and how the event takes place, right?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Essentially what we're doing is, you know, we've been doing this since 2002. Essentially what happened was is that back in the tragedy and aftermath of 9/11, one of our members, who since passed away, Frank Curley, noticed that, hey, a lot of people in Wilmington and the surrounding towns were being very patriotic, but along and flying all sorts of flags all over the place. But the problem that they were having was is that as flags were being flown, at some point in time they were starting to look, you know, kind of like this. So he said, hey, we should have a formal way to properly retire flags, and we came up with the flag retirement ceremony that we still do today. Basically, through the town manager's office, we have the flag collection box here at Town Hall, and we also have one at Wilmington Post Office where all year long we collect what we call unserviceable flags, and we bring them to headquarters, which is located right behind the Harnden Tavern. And we get the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and any volunteers. We take the flags, fold them into a tricon, the triangle shape, which is actually reminiscent of what a Navy captain wore. That's why we get the triangular shape. And we have a flag retirement ceremony. Wanted to let both the selectmen, town manager, town offices, and obviously the public know that our ceremony, as Captain Kelly said, will be at Minuteman headquarters on Thursday, June 14th, which is Flag Day. Our ceremony will be at 7 o'clock. It's a brief ceremony. Ceremony itself is maybe 10, 15 minutes. So if anybody would like to come, we'd certainly welcome any members of the board and certainly the public, and especially the kids. I mean, we've invited like the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, youth groups. So we really want, we'd like some participation from the kids, just to be able to show them the proper way to respect the U.S. flag. A few minutes ago, we did the Pledge of Allegiance to a nice, beautiful flag over there. And we want to make sure that the kids realize that eventually flags like that may someday look like this. And, instead of just treating it as a cheap piece of cloth, we want to retire it in a manner that befits its dignity. So with that, I don't know if you have any questions or...
Yeah.
Frank, can you repeat the address?
It's Salem Street, literally right behind. Yeah, Minuteman headquarters is directly behind the tavern. I don't know the specific. This is the 344, maybe, I'm not sure.
That's fine, I just want to let everyone else out there know exactly where it was, because it was, I skimmed over briefly. And on a personal note, we have a bunch of the real small flags at home. Are those also considered, need a proper?
Yeah. Yeah, what we do, Ed, thanks for mentioning that. Truth of the matter is that when we get flags that are really bad, what we do is that we actually take a fairly decent flag, put some less serviceable flags in those, and wrap them into a tricorn. So basically what you'll do is that when if you come to headquarters, you'll see some of the flags are a little puffy, and that's kind of our little secret.
Can people bring the flags on that night before?
And thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, if anybody has flags that they want to bring, certainly, absolutely, they're more than welcome. Any U.S. flag.
Thank you for being here, and thank Mr. West and Mr. Kelly, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Yes.
A quick
Mr. Bennett.
question, maybe I missed it, the time of the event on the 14th?
7 o'clock.
7 p.m.?
Yeah,
Great.
like I said, there's a ceremony that's about 15 minutes. We actually start the flag retiring about 7:15. People don't have to stay for the whole thing. They can, if they want to stay for the ceremony and just wait in line. If they have their own flags and want to respect their flags and leave, they're more than welcome. There's no you don't have to stay. People do choose to stay. Sometimes what we'll do is we have some nicer flags that we're going to show the kids how to fold flags if there's kids that are interested. We make the kids especially a part of the ceremony because we want them to learn.
Well, thank you both for volunteering to do this.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the service that you do for the community. And above and beyond that is basically awareness. You're telling folks out there of the service you provide and how to retire the flag. So every year is a learning block. So folks today that did not know about this, now they know, hopefully through the press and WCTV that can see that. So I want to thank you for that. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're all set. Thank you, Frank, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Just want to let you know that we do meet the second Thursday of the month. It's at 8 o'clock if anybody's ever interested in coming to one of our meetings.
Right, thank you. And this is June 14th, behind the Hardin Tavern at 7 o'clock.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very
What
much.
you do.
Have a great night.
Hey, take care.
Okay, our next appointment's with Valerie Gingrich, the Director of Planning and Conservation. She's going to give us a little overview on the market study and the economic development.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm well.
So I'm here tonight to give you an overview on what we'll be doing this summer. In what I think of as a sort of a first step in an ongoing process of economic development in town. We'll be doing, we'll be contracting with the UMass Donahue Institute. They'll be doing a market study that's focused on the area of Main Street from Richmond Street down to Clark. So kind of our main shopping area, I guess I would call it, with Market Basket. And also it has some of the more visual vacancies that we talk about, the Sonic, the Chili's, Walgreens, if you want to consider that one, and potentially soon the Rite Aid. So we'll focus on that area, and the market study is going to do, I guess, three things. First, it'll gather some of the background information. So baseline demographics, baseline employment. It'll look at real estate and give us sort of a general idea of what the market is in that area. And then it'll take that and build on that with sort of a a supply and demand analysis. So they'll look at what people spend money on in that area, and they'll look at the folks who live in that surrounding area, what they spend money on. So if folks in that area are spending money on things outside of that area, what are those things? And could those things be appropriate to bring to Main Street? So it'll kind of look at the gaps between what's being supplied and what's being demanded. And all of that has to be put into context. So they'll also look at the third thing, which is talk to real estate professionals, talk to landlords, talk to elected officials. They'll talk to everyone they can talk to sort of get a context behind, what's happening in that area. So if folks in that surrounding area are spending money on furniture outside of the area, they're going to Jordan's or something. Well, would they spend money on furniture on Main Street, or are they going to spend money on furniture elsewhere because they like to go elsewhere? So sort of getting to the context of what people are spending money on, what types of things might be good to have on Main Street that we don't already have. And sort of get to more of the bottom of why those vacancies are happening, why it's difficult to rent those spaces. Is it rent prices? Is it transportation issues? Like what are the perceived problems, and what are maybe some of the actual problems? So they're going to be gathering all of that information for us, and they're hoping to wrap that up by October so we can look for that information in the fall. And with that information, we will then be able to kind of look at it, study it, and figure out whether we need to do further study on, different aspects of it, or maybe it leads us to a community process looking at the zoning. And I guess I would stress the importance of zoning, not just as a planner, but just that, zoning is what you can do in a certain area. And not only what you can do as a use, how you get to do it. So can you go in and get a building permit and not have to go through a special permit process that you may or may not get your special permit for that business that you would like to do? So the difficulty of whether you can do it or not, and then how difficult is it to be able to do those uses. And I guess I would stress that zoning, developers or business owners don't like to go through difficult processes. So they're looking for the town to say, you can go in and do that as of right without any discretionary review. And they're going to see that type of use as something that we're encouraging. And if there's a special permit attached to a use, they're going to say, oh, the town may not want us there, so we're not sure if we want to go in that location. So zoning does matter in that way. And so I think that this market study will give us information to then talk about, have a community conversation about, are there uses that we all agree that should just be as of right? Our zoning is very special permit heavy, I would say. There's a lot of special permits in it, and that gives us real control over whether something's appropriate or not, which can be really good at times, but it also can turn businesses off sometimes. So we sort of may want to talk about, are there a group of uses that may be good for Main Street that everybody agrees would be good for Main Street? And then why not allow them as of right? And that would be the conversation that we would have. Just an example of where this data and information may lead us. It may not lead us there at all, but it will help us inform what our next step is, and get us going in a direction where we can kind of identify how to encourage businesses on Main Street. And then we'll have the difficult discussions about, what businesses will do well there, what are appropriate there, the trade-offs between more business and more traffic, which is always a very interesting conversation. One person's economic development solution could be another person's real traffic nightmare. So we have to be careful and really talk through these issues. And I think that market study is going to be a great way to get us started on that. So I think I covered everything that I wanted to go through, but I'm happy to talk, take questions, whatever you'd like.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, Valerie, I'm glad to see that the town's involved, but let's talk about what you talked about, and I know where we should really focus as well, and I know this is just a learning avenue right now. You talk about Walgreens, Sonic, and Chili. Corporate has to take responsibility too, because they built a Walgreens in Wilmington. Down the street, they got one in Tewksbury. On the other side of North Wilmington, they got one in North Reading. And not too long ago, they had one in Reading Square. They closed that place down. Walgreens, obviously, there's no parking. So corporate's got to take a responsibility. And I'm glad to see the town's doing something. I don't know, maybe Chili's and Sonic needs a better choice of restaurants. I don't know. I think that's, the jury's out on that. But a bigger vacancy in the communities in the industrial way. Somehow we really need to focus on the industrial way as a town if we could try to assist. Now, obviously, it's all private sector. And obviously, you need realtors that are going to get involved, and they're the ones who are going to do all the marketing. So I assume they're going to, take some numbers. They probably already have numbers, I would assume, good, realtors. I assume that what you're going to come up with, that realtors would probably use this as a working body, probably, to see, the ratio of who's in the area. I mean, I'm sure they got it down to a science as well, but I think it's good that the town, but like in Wilmington, we can talk like right near Shamad's, that place was vacant for years. It was run down. They started doing some renovations. So sometimes these landlords got to step it up and make the building a little better. And that's where the focus is too. But I'm glad to see the town's involved, but I think we should really focus not on Main Street as much, in the industrial way. There's a lot of vacancy. Ballardville Street, Research Drive, Industrial Way. There's several off Ballardville Street. And I don't know, I'm new at it as well as you are, and you know far better than I do about planning, but you gotta focus in the industrial way, because if we can get the industrial people going, that's a big benefit. But I understand Main Street, whatever we can assist. I mean, I don't have no magic answer, but I think working together as a whole is beneficial, but corporate and private business got to step up to the plate to realize where they locate these businesses, and they have to fix up their properties to become marketable. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bennett.
Hi, Valerie. Thanks for being here. Obviously excited to talk about this. I do have a quick question for you. So is it the folks that are going to be doing the study, will they at some point this summer be soliciting input from the residents, or will that be something that we'll look at, they can give their feedback in the fall?
This is, the study is, it's more information gathering, factual gathering than community, I guess, desires or wants. So I foresee us using the facts and the data to then have that conversation with the community as the kind of foundation. What do we do with this information? What does it mean to us? And where do we want to go from here? I think it'll provide a great kind of stepping stone to work with to see where we want to go. Because it'll identify, so it'll take each type of retail and it'll say how much of it is being supplied in the area and how much of that type of retail is being purchased in general by the people around that area. So, it'll identify things that we may want more of on Main Street. It'll identify things that we may have too much of. So we'll sort of have to interpret that a little bit, and then also weigh that against what people want too.
Great. No, it's really exciting. I think it's going to time up well with hopefully, I know this board has had discussions about organizing some type of task force or economic development committee, if you will, made up of residents and others. So I think that hopefully we'll have that in place, so when the fall comes, we can have some residents take a look and have their input. There's a lot of talk about, well, geez, I wish we had this, or wish we had that. And I think we're not at that stage yet. I think we're at the stage where let's figure out why those restaurants, if it's your favorite restaurant, whatever it might be, why aren't they there? Why don't they want to come there? So what can we do to entice them to come? So I think this is a really big piece to it. I think this will help our economy here in the town locally, and then just another step in the right direction. I like what we did with at the last town meeting, and now we're continuing to move forward with this. So really, I think it's exciting. So thank you.
Mr. Eaton.
Ms. Gingrich, thank you for being here. Do we know about the methods that are going to be used? Is it going to be students with clipboards, or phone calls?
For the interviews, I haven't gotten into that level of detail yet with them. But I believe it's going to be both phone calls and probably face-to-face meetings. I know they're going to target some of the property owners to try to get to the bottom of some of the, details of why things are the way they are. So I think it's going to be a combination of efforts.
And did you say a start date for when that's?
Yeah, so July 1st, we're ready to go.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Valerie, thank you for being here. Mr. Bendel's kind of stole a little of my questions, but has the town manager and yourself and anyone else in town hall started talking about an economic development committee? And because I agree with Mr. Bendel, there's something, every other surrounding town around us has some sort of person that either works in town hall, or it's a volunteer position, or a group, or like Greg said, a task force. Have we started those discussions? Because I think it's important.
Yeah, I mean, I think that type of group would have to have a mission, right? It would have to have a purpose, and to be able to have an effective committee or group, you're going to want to have some direction, I guess. So I would see kind of getting this information in, seeing where we are, and sort of talking about where we go next, and if that would be, benefited by a committee.
So the reason why I ask is Mr. McCoy brought up some great points about the rest of the town, because Main Street is the most visible, like you stated, and we drive by it every day, most of us, and we see the vacant buildings, and Rite Aid's closing soon, if it hasn't already closed, which is a Walgreens, believe it or not. So that's what we see, but the Ballardville, the street, the Ballardvilles, the industrial ways that Mr. McCoy mentioned are important. So that's why I think a full, an economic development board would benefit the whole town. And like you said, one person's traffic is another person's nightmare, so it has to be touched delicately.
Yeah, and I think there's, I think the two sectors are a little different too. Just because a lot of our industrial areas are right off the highway, which is great because industry wants to be close to the highway. We've heard a lot about, both Karen, the assessor, and I hear this, that we're sort of the perfect distance. We're close to Boston, but we're not too close. So we're easy to get to Boston, but we're far enough so that the rents are really good, and we have really good warehouse stock where folks can take those warehouses and create R&D space, or they're flexible. So we've heard really good things about our industrial, I guess, supply. But Main Street is a little bit different because it's just removed from the highway. It's not very far from the highway, but it's also not right off the highway. And it's kind of a, people pass through it, people live around it, but it's not necessarily a destination from the region. So it's got sort of a unique place, location, and role. So I think it deserves a little bit of focus at this point to see what our opportunities are and what are our challenges for that area, and then we can chip away at the rest of the town as well.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for the update, and I'm looking forward to the study.
Yes, Mr. Bendel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick follow-up question. This comes to mind. The committee or the task force that's going to be doing the study, could you reach out to them and just find out perhaps, are they going to be interviewing some of these businesses that have left recently? I think that maybe that information of why they left might be beneficial to the study. Why did Chili's up and leave? I know they closed some other locations also in Burlington, I think, and some of that's corporate stuff, but is there a particular reason why they didn't like that spot? I just think that somehow that feedback might be good too. So if you could relay that to them. And just to piggyback on what Ed said, I mean, it's just really crucial, I think, to have this task force put in place. I mean, we have challenges, and in this community, like every other community, we have empty businesses on Main Street like a lot of other communities, but the one thing we don't have a shortage of is volunteers. So we have a lot of volunteers in Wilmington. If we put them together with professionals like yourself, I think we can do a lot of great things, like, digesting the information we get in the fall, being proactive about places. There are businesses in town that we know are leaving. You know, Textron comes to mind. It's not a big secret that they'll be gone someday. You know, we're looking ahead at, so how can we be proactive with some of these things instead of being reactive and saying, man, I wish that place didn't close. I wish this business didn't go out of business. Or what a shame that there's another. So I really think that that task force could put us in the right direction.
Okay. All good points. Anybody else? All said. Thank you
Thank you.
very much. All right, on to communications.
Thank you. So our first communication is information from the Mass Bay Transit Authority for the low bus schedule for weekends from July 7th to the 22nd, and then August 4th to the 26th. There'll be no train service on the weekends while the MBTA continues to improve the commuter rail system. And so we will also put this information up on our website.
Thank you. And we're late on communication, so that's pretty good, huh? All right, so we're to the board to consider items. And the first board to consider. You wanna take?
So I'll give you the contracts to sign. So the first board to consider item is an access agreement with Olin Chemicals to conduct water sampling. So Olin has asked to have water sampling for monitoring wells that are on town property, and there are 6 different locations. And the work is part of the final remedial investigation feasibility work plan, collectively known as the RIFS plan, that was dated August 14th, 2009, and is under the direction of the US EPA. What the permits will do is allow representatives from Olin to obtain environmental data, including but not limited to depth and evaluation of the local groundwater table, and obtain relevant monitoring information and data regarding the groundwater conditions. The parties must notify the police department, the fire department, the health department, and the Department of Public Works of their intent to be on site no later than 48 hours in advance, and they must follow that up in writing. All work is done at Olin's expense, and Olin, through the agreement, will provide the town within 30 days the final validated results of the study.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a quick comment?
Yes.
I just want to tell the assistant manager that I remember last year I got a couple phone calls. The folks that live off Woburn Street, I actually went down to their home. When they were doing these testing, they did not. We had to call the police. I had to go down there. I did call the manager. To Jeff's credit, he did contact the drilling company the following morning. They were going down there, drilling, making these test pits, so therefore they could take the samples of the water, not even telling the people that live in the area. They didn't know what's going on, and they've had their fair share of contamination in the area, all in New England Transrail. So I believe that if they're gonna do these testing, somehow they have to notify the residents in that proximity of when the testing's gonna happen, the time and day of this, and when's it gonna end. Because folks, when they came back home, some folks weren't even told. You know, there was like water that was spread out in the area. I know there's wetlands off Woburn Street, Denal Drive. I believe that's where one of the streets are at the very end, so.
It looks like the maps that were provided are some properties off of Jewel Drive, some locations off Jewel Drive
Right.
and on Eames Street. Map 14, 26, 27, and 39.
But that happened last year, and to Jeff's credit, he did
Okay.
contact Olin. So if we can have whoever the subcontractor that's doing the drilling, they should, even if it's businesses, and there's folks that live off Eames Street as well, they could notify them ahead of time. That way, they're aware of it's happening, that's all.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think that makes sense.
Thank you. I've noted that.
Any other questions on the contract? Okay. Let's have a motion to accept the agreement.
I make a motion to, as described by the chairman.
Second.
Any discussion, further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. There's six portions to sign, okay? And you have a note of that to
Yes, I took note.
inform the residents.
Yes.
Okay, next board to consider item.
The next board to consider item is a request by Joyce Mulvaney, who is the communications manager for the Reading Municipal Light Plant, to conduct an electrical vehicle ride and drive event on Sunday, July 15th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. in conjunction with the farmers market. So the event will be the electric vehicle ride and drive event and will consist of informational tables, electric vehicles on display, and car dealerships that will be offering individuals an opportunity to test drive some of the vehicles. Participating dealerships will indemnify, RMLD in the town, and those who wish to drive a vehicle will need to sign a release. The dealers will use the school street entrance for safety, and Dana Burnham and Amanda Muncy of the Farmers Market have been consulted. They have given consent to use the parking lot in an email dated June 7, 2018.
Is there a motion to permit Reading Municipal Light Department to have electric vehicle rides at the farmers market event?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussions or questions on this? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. And that's it for board to consider, so that brings us up to public comments. Is there any public comments? Yes, please identify yourself and your address, please.
Kevin McDonald, Wilmington, Mass. Since one of the communications has to do with contamination in the Olin issue, last meeting I brought up the fact that Wilmington has a high rate of cancer. And my question is, through you, Mr. Chairman, maybe to Mr. Loud, I know you're watching the clock, so I don't go over 5 minutes, but if Mr. Loud would be willing to take the lead on this. There are more than 6 wells that should be monitored, and there's scores of wells. I know that you're from Woburn, Mr. Loud, and I know that Woburn's had some massive contamination problems in its history. Olin is an interested party, and they're interested in selling their property. And so if we're gonna give them an agreement to go onto our land to monitor wells, I think there should be a third party there. I think there should be a representative from the town who also receives sampling from these wells, so that we're keeping them honest. And I was wondering, Mr. Loud, if you'd be willing to maybe take the lead, if you'd support that notion, if you'd maybe talk to the manager about that and get some oversight on that. Would you be willing to do that?
Let me just bring this up,
Please,
if you wouldn't
I'm
mind.
not gonna get you
In
to-
regards to the Olin agreement, it was brought to our town council, who reviewed the agreement, so that everything's in line with how they're going to be proceeding with going to do the testing. We did have communications with our Public Works Department, Mike Woods, and they are aware of what's taking place, and they're also going to be in that monitoring system as well. So we'll be on top of that.
Okay, I fully understand that they would know that that's being done, but many agencies such as the FDA, they'll have pharmaceutical people going through a revolving door and then going to work for the oversight agencies such as the FDA. EPA has the same thing. I'm just simply asking you this. Can we request samples ourselves so that we're not relying on Olin, who is interested in getting rid of this disaster and selling the property to Transrail, and we can have maybe somebody that monitors our own wells for contamination, go down there, get samples of everything that comes out of those wells, and have our own study. In addition to that, what I'd like to actually see is, I'd like to see the board have an agenda item where they'll have maps and show every single monitoring well that's being affected by the Olin plume, and other wells, other maps that show private wells in the area that might not have been shut down. We know that the 5 wells at Meadow Brook have been shut down, but how about the other people that have private wells? We don't know if they're being contaminated. The other thing is, when they're doing the drilling, are they drilling through the contamination into the aquifer or into the water table and actually creating another conduit so that the plume can have another way to flow into the aquifer and contaminate more water. So that's one particular issue. And through you, Mr. Chairman, if Mr. Loud would be willing to do that, I would give him great respect for maybe taking the lead on that.
There are locations that we do have for the monitoring of wells, and there is a diagram for that. You're more than willing to look at that if you'd like
Would
to.
you be willing to put an agenda item on, say, next meeting, so that this comes to the forefront of the attention of all the people in Wilmington who've been affected with losing a loved one to cancer, somebody who's presently fighting cancer, and maybe we can get some people down here to offer their insight too.
You have to also understand that this is a private contractor that's doing this, and will be, the DPW staff will be accompanying the representatives from Olin on this. So
What's the name of the
it's going to
private
be,
contractor?
it's going to be monitored.
Can you share with us the name of the private contractor?
We can take a look here.
Is it Olin? Because that seems like it's a conflict of interest, and it just seems like the town of Wilmington should take the lead and say, hey, we're not going to have the wool pulled over our eyes anymore.
It is the Amick Foster Wheeler Environment and Infrastructure, Inc. that's going to be doing the
And
testing.
So Olin will be paying them, right?
I would assume so.
Now, I don't know if Olin hires them for every single monitoring they do around the country.
I have no
But
idea of
it would
that.
be interesting to see if we could have our people down there also getting samples. In other words, keep them honest,
Okay,
okay?
thank you.
The other question that I had was, maybe through you, Mr. Chairman, of course, for Mr. McCoy, with regard to the bond that was just signed for the water line that's supposed to go over the Park Street Bridge over 93, are we being charged a penalty if that gets paid off early? Number one. Number two, when I was at the town meeting, the director of our public works, when I asked the question, how long is this line? He didn't know how long it was. And so I'd like to know the bond amount that you guys signed for, and how long the water line is. And if you could tell us a little bit about
that-
what
that
Well,
bond
I'll just say this
amount-
one thing, and
Go
I'll
ahead.
just say,
All
from what
right.
I understand, at the town meeting, it was $850,000. That was the cost, from what I understand on that, okay? As far as me elaborating on the plans and the length and all that, I don't have access to that information. All I know is the appropriation was $850,000. It was somewhat of an emergency. It needs to get done. They did take care of it at the time being, put a little Band-Aid on it, and that's what happened. So unless you know a lot more than I do, I don't know any more about that. Obviously, I got to depend on Mr. Woods, who's the superintendent, to have those answers.
Maybe
But I
we
did due diligence by supporting it. I don't know
How
what else
long
I
is
can
the
say.
bond for? How many years was that bond for?
I don't have that magic
Because
answer.
850,000 over the course of many, many years, 20 years, I don't know how long you guys signed it for,
Mm-hmm.
but when you figure the interest on that, it's enormous. $850,000 is just unbelievable for that short a span of water line.
Yeah, I believe what we signed at the last meeting for the bond was for 15 years.
15
Right.
years.
Okay, is there, yeah, yes, sir.
The bond that we signed last meeting was not for that water replacement, it was the one on Ballardville Street. So you got some information wrong, Mr. McDonald. Not surprised there. We combined three different things on that bond last meeting. Yentl Farm, the Ballardville improvements, the water main, and I cannot remember the last one. We took
The fire
$850,000.
pumper.
What?
Fire pumper.
The fire pumper. We took $850,000 out of free cash to pay for that water main
I'm glad you
replacement.
brought that up, Mr. Lau, because there was $500,000 left over from the Yentl project where it was over budgeted. And I believe it was you, Mr. Carr, that actually pointed that out. There was $500,000 left over from the Yentl Farm project. And so why are we not using that $500,000? Why are we borrowing $850,000 when we have 20-something million dollars in free cash and we're paying interest to
We're
the
not
bank and getting...
We're not borrowing $850,000, Kevin. I just told you, we're taking it out of free cash. to really repair on Woburn Street Bridge.
How much is the
Park
bond,
Street-
how much was the bond signed for?
I don't have that, I have that figure at home, I don't have it here.
Maybe you can just, next
Okay.
meeting, just answer that, I
All
appreciate
right,
that.
thank you.
And the
Is
very
there-
last
is there
question that I
anyone-
had.
Anyone else with public comments?
Yes.
Yes, sir, Mr.
Jeff
Please
Wood-
identify yourself and your address.
Jeff Wood, 18 Frederick Drive. My question surrounds the interviewing of new law firms. And when this came up early on, back in February or March, when you learned about the fact that your current law firm was going to break up and it was going to go off on different pieces, I had asked the question, were you unhappy with the current law firm? And I know I got a response from the board saying no. So I think it's great to put out an RFP and take a look at everybody, and I've done a little bit of research online. And so I've seen that a few of the firms that you're currently looking at, one of them was selected by the town of Billerica 4 years ago. And one of their concerns at that time was, would they get enough focused attention, because it's a very large law firm covering a ton of municipalities in Massachusetts. So have you reached out to the town of Billerica to find out have they been happy with that selection? Is that part of the overall RFP that you're looking for references?
Yes, we're looking into references. And I, for one, I don't recall saying that I'm satisfied with the current law firm, but that's okay if you think I did.
Back
But,
to the TV.
okay.
Mr. Chairman. I brought that up at our interview last week with them, because I happen to know the town manager of Billerica. He's the former mayor of Woburn, and I went to high school with him. And I plan on reaching out to him for that very reason. Going into that interview, that was my biggest concern with that particular law firm, is they are so big. How can we get the small town feel that we want and deserve? And they answered that night. So, but I am going to call Mr. Curran. When we're done with all our interviews, tomorrow night, we got more interviews, we asked those questions, if we could follow up with the references that were provided, and we as individual selectmen can do that, so we can make an informed decision.
Right, and another thing that came up in that article was the fact that in that first year when they signed this deal with them, that they had a 1-year term of $108,000. So I know from being in other meetings that we're paying $300,000. So is this the kind of
Mr. Wood,
numbers?
through the
Yep.
chair, I would suggest reviewing town crier articles from the December 2003 through February 2004 to find out where that contract ended up prior to the expiration of that 1-year term, because there was an adjustment made about halfway through that 1 year that significantly increased the price to the town that firm charged us. So they did charge.
Us or Billerica?
That's $108,000 today is certainly not Billerica. I don't know
He
what
just
that.
said it's
Well,
Billerica.
But I'm talking
Mr.
about
McDonald,
Billerica,
this is
Yeah.
Mr. Wood's,
Yeah, just clarify.
his time for
So
public comments.
that $108,000 figure was not what it ended up with, and it's 15 years ago, but that's not what that first year ended up at. But we have two more firms to interview tomorrow night, and we'll be doing our due diligence to make sure that the town is getting sound legal advice.
Okay.
Is there any other public comments? Yes, Mr. Woods.
Just to qualify, when your important dates, the Minuteman flag ceremony says 6 p.m., and as I told you earlier, it's 7 p.m. That was my error to Beverly.
Yep.
When you put it in, so if you just...
I actually noted that on here. Okay. All right, and we're going to move on now to new business. Is there any new business to be brought forward? Mr. Bendel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to give a quick shout out to a young man just graduated Wilmington High School. It was well documented in the media, but to Robert Sicker and his family, I want to congratulate him on not missing one day of school. I just thought that was really cool. As a teacher myself, what an impressive feat, and he obviously has a very bright future, so congrats to him. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm good right now, thanks.
Mr. Eaton.
Briefly, I want to congratulate the Men in Blue for their 5th straight Rotary Trivia victory this past Friday. Our best and brightest have displayed themselves to be the town's best and brightest. I did take part in the Brady Foundation's 5K Run for Recovery with Selectman Bendel, both of our wives and daughters this past Saturday, and we also saw that the farmers market opened up their season this past Sunday as well, which was good. I did attend the Mass Municipal Association's newly elected Selectmen conference on Sunday morning, or Saturday morning. It was down in Natick. I found it to be a very helpful and valuable experience. There was a lot of discussion and questions to an individual who is the finance director in Arlington, formerly in Amherst, as to rating agencies and bond rating. And I was surrounded by selectmen from other communities that did not have AA+ ratings, and there was a lot of concern for them that were lower rated as to how to improve their bonding rating. And the individual who was presenting's first comment was, "Is your town rich?" Because rating agencies put a certain amount of value on quote-unquote rich communities. And I found that to be very telling. And I know at our last meeting there was a fair amount of discussion about our current level study at the AA+ rating. I don't consider Wilmington a rich community. I think we have a very good spectrum of middle class. And if the rating agencies are going to penalize us because we don't have an average household income of $300,000 a year, well, I find that to be a little bit flawed in logic. But I do want to congratulate the town manager, the assistant town manager, the town accountant, and all the individuals that work very hard to make sure that our tax dollars are being spent in a responsible way. I also took note that there was a recommendation that we have an unfunded liabilities policy. Many of the AAA rated communities do have a policy. The most frequently referenced was the town of Brookline, or the city of Brookline, which certainly would fit into that wealthier community category. But at the same time, I did take a look at the town of Brookline's unfunded liability policy. It is not formulaic by any stretch, but at the same time, I think it might be worthwhile to look into adopting something similar to Brookline's unfunded liability policy, so that not only the taxpayers in town, but also the employees of the community know that when we're putting away towards OPEB and when we're putting away towards our unfunded pension liability, that it is not a derivative figure that we are coming at after everything else is budgeted for. That is something that we are, and I know that that's not how it's handled, but so that we actually have a policy in place that we can show people that we are looking out for the long-term benefits, both pension and OPEB in the future. So I would ask that that the town manager's office take a look into that.
Duly noted.
That's all.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is the time of night that I have the honor of calling out to some veterans in town, something that I started when I became a selectman. And I have two tonight. One's very close to me, and one I can't wait to shake his hand because he's currently a police officer in Wilmington. Rafael Cruz is deployed in Iraq. He's an Army major. I just want to shout out to him and his family and thank him for his service. The other gentleman it's his birthday today. It's my brother-in-law. His name is Rick Cox. He was 20 years in the Coast Guard. He's currently working with the Coast Guard in Homeland Security. He is home resting on his birthday night tonight because he has knee replaced last Thursday. He's doing well. I just want to shout out to him and thank him for his service. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. McCoy.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to give a quick shout out. Yesterday, I went to Wamisit Lanes. It was a joint effort between the Tewksbury Chief of Police Sheehan and the Wilmington Police Chief, Chief Pagonis, and the men and women that serve both communities. It was a wonderful time. I really enjoyed myself, and I've never been at Wamisit Lanes, to be honest with you. I walked inside, beautiful place. They got some nice little restaurant, and they have little things. So I told my son Chris, we're going to be putting that on the radar on Wednesday nights to go to Wamisit Lanes. But seriously, they did a great job. You had law enforcement around the surrounding areas. You had the Sheriff's Department. I actually saw the Bear, the big vehicle that costs a lot of money, but it's well worth it because they protect us. And they do a great job, the town of Tewksbury and Wilmington, where they it's money cancer for kids. They raise a lot of money and they give it to those families, and it's a great organization. And I just wanted to give a little shout out to the both towns. They did a great job, Chief Pagonis and Chief Sheehan. Fantastic. Great time. Thank you.
I would echo those comments from Mr. McCoy. I went to that event as well, the Cops for Kids with Cancer. It was fabulous, the way they put it on. I think it was the first year that they did it. They're looking forward to doing it again in the future. So hopefully more people will attend. It was just a great event that they had. I also attended the Brady Foundation Run for Substance Abuse, and I saw Mr. Bendel and Mr. Eaton walking. I did not walk, by the way. Not because I didn't want to, but I did participate in the raffles. I have a couple of bad knees. That's my excuse. But I did go over to the farmer's market. That was the first day opening of the farmer's market, and that was very nice as well. Just a quick little reminder for my colleagues on the board. We have our town manager's contract is coming up in September. So we're going to have to be reviewing that, looking that over. We'll be setting up a subcommittee. I don't want anybody to volunteer this evening, but offline, just keep that in mind. If anybody's interested in serving on that subcommittee, just let me know. Okay? And that's it for new business up here? Okay. Important dates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have one right in front of me. I apologize for that. And this is from the iPods for Wounded Veterans. Paul Cardillo is the chairman for iPods for Wounded Veterans. It's a locally based organization that does yeoman's work for injured servicemen and women across the Commonwealth. And each year they give out a Teacher of the Year award. And this year, for the very first time, Wilmington is getting the Teacher of the Year award. And this award goes to a teacher who's dedicated themselves to the mission of supporting the rehabilitation of the injured servicemen and women in the United States of America. iPods for Wounded Veterans are pleased to announce that Dawn Martell from Wilmington High School will be receiving this year's Teacher of the Year award, and she'll be attending the school committee meeting on Wednesday to receive that award. And what she did was she started a letter campaign. She got all the students involved at the high school with the letter campaign, and also she did various bags of items that were sent off. And Dawn is the first teacher in Wilmington High School to win the award as director of the Local Heroes Club. And I think Local Heroes is another established organization in Wilmington as well. So cheers to Dawn Martell, and congratulations for winning the Teacher of the Year award from iPods for Wounded Veterans. Okay, on to important dates.
Okay, thank you. So important dates, Sundays through September 30th, the Farmers Market, the Town Common parking lot, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. June 14th, the flag retirement ceremony with the Wilmington Minuteman headquarters at 7 p.m. June 15th and 16th is the Wilmington Relay for Life at the Wilmington High School. Starts on Friday afternoon, June 15th through Saturday morning, June 16th. June 25th is the next Board of Selectmen meeting in Town Hall, Room 9 at 7 p.m. June 29th to July 2nd are the 4th of July festivities. You can go to funonthefourth.com, and the Town Common Spectacular Fireworks is July 2nd. June 30th is Family Day on the Town Common. June 30th is the Wilmington Fire Department versus the Wilmington Police Department charity softball game at the Wilmington High School softball field at 4 p.m. On July 7th, the library closes for Saturdays for the summer. July 9th, Board of Selectmen meeting here in Town Hall, Room 9 at 7 p.m. July 11th, concerts on the Common, Jimmy and the Jesters from 6:30 p.m. to 8 o'clock p.m. July 11th, brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. July 12th, Commission on Disabilities Emergency Preparedness in the Town Hall Auditorium, 10:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. July 14th, brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. July 18th, concerts on the Common, Peking and the Mystics. Sounds interesting. 6:30 p.m. to 8 o'clock p.m. July 25th, another concert on the Common, Perfect Crime, 6:30 p.m. to 8 o'clock p.m. And then July 26th through July 29th is the Moving Wall on the Town Common.
Thank you. Just a reminder, and I don't believe I heard that read, actually, tomorrow on June 12th, we have another Selectmen's meeting, so I hope you'll all be there. And that will be for the purposes of town council interviews, strictly for that in itself, okay? And I think that does it. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll second it real quick for discussion. I see in the audience, we have just as many candidates running for state rep as Wilmington residents. So I think that's a first. So I just wanted to make that point. All right.
That's a good thing, by the way.
It's a good
And there's a
point.
second.
welcome.
Oh, yeah.
All those
doing?
in favor of adjournment? All right, unanimous. Good night, thank you. See you tomorrow.